A 5-minute call on behalf of the Labour Party, Lewis Wall.
Malo o pito a te mangai o te whare. We're now in the 18th hour of debating this bill under urgency, and I think it's really important that I clarify our position on the bill, and particularly in relation to the two parts of the bill that was presented before the House before the commencement, because in fact we have debated 8 parts of this piece of legislation. Part 1, which we support, and I want to reiterate that, which is to extend the smooth transition to the Auckland Unitary Plan, which commences on the 16th of September 2016, was done to ensure that 8 specific developments could continue, that those developers would not have to submit new resource consents. And the relevance actually to the whole discussion about affordability is 591 affordable houses, because those 8 specific developments are going to provide 7,880 houses. So we support that part of the bill. In terms of part 2, we're very clear that we don't support that part of the bill, and the reason that we don't support that part of the bill, actually I'm going to quote from the Public Works Act, that the Minister is empowered to acquire any land required for government work, and that any local authority is empowered to acquire any land for local work, but there's an explicit contract in our Public Works Act that land not needed is offered back to the person from whom it was acquired. And that's essentially our primary opposition to part 2. We think that we've circumvented that explicit contract between the Crown and New Zealand citizens who have handed over parts of their property to Public Works for the greater good. So that essentially was our opposition to that part of the legislation. Now, there were 3 other parts to this piece of legislation that I specifically want to mention. The first of which was part 3 introduced by my colleague Phil Twyford. And really it was about providing 10,000 affordable houses per year for first home buyers. And our rationale for those 10,000 affordable houses for first home buyers actually is about the number of houses that we sell in New Zealand every year. So there are 90,790 odd homes sold in New Zealand every year, and approximately 21% of those purchases are first home buyers based on 2015 statistics provided by CoreLogic. So that's 19,066 first home buyers in the last financial year. So this particular SOP was incredibly relevant to that practice. The second SOP, or the part that I want to highlight for the House, was part 7, which amended the Housing Corp Act, and it was about the distribution of profits. Again, I want to acknowledge my colleague, the Honourable Matiria Tude, because essentially the proposition was for surplus profits. So in 2014 and 15, that's $226 million should be reinvested back into providing rental housing for those most in need. An incredibly important principle, and I think it needs to be highlighted. Now, part 8, which was about amending the Housing Restructuring and Tenancy Matters Act of 1992, was about increasing the supply of Housing New Zealand properties by 1,000 every year. And it's relevant when we look back at the number of people waiting on housing lists. So if I read them out, in March 2012, there were 4,637 people on the waiting list. March 2013, 4,495. June 2014, 5,840. September 2015, 4,467. And as of July 2016, we have 5,012 New Zealanders waiting on the Housing New Zealand waiting list. So actually increasing the housing stock every year by 1,000 would help meet this chronic need that has now been displayed for the last 5 years. I just want to end with some statistics from Manurewa Marae. Manurewa Marai's got 64 people who are currently residing at Manurewa Marae, and of those, and I just have lost my page, but essentially 67% of the people at Manurewa Marae are children. And so the issues that we're dealing with actually are about how we are preparing the next generation for the opportunities that we want to provide them. And them being homeless actually is a shame on our country. Kia ora.
Ian Lees Galloway.